Hey guys, it's Isaiah with Symphony Landscaping here, taking a minute to talk about compost. Spring is here, it's May almost in Calgary, and everyone's gonna be thinking about getting their veggie garden rolling. And so we wanted to touch base on compost. It's one of those tools that you can use in your garden that makes an incredible difference in the productivity and yields. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you should learn about if you're interested in gardening. So three kind of main points is what is compost? How does that affect my life, or how can I use it, and then where to find some high quality compost. So first off, what is compost? Compost is the kind of harnessing the natural decomposition process that happens in nature and speeding it up in a controlled environment. So it's basically you take your browns and your greens. Your greens are nitrogen and your browns are carbon rich material. So your browns are your leaves, they're wood chips, old mulch, stuff like that. Straw is another great brown. And then on your green side, you're gonna have kitchen scraps, manure, lawn clippings, fresh green material that, pulling weeds out of your garden, although we'll get into why you don't wanna put weeds in your compost pile. So essentially what you do is you take your ratio of your browns and your greens. If you have a higher concentration of browns, your compost pile is gonna go slower and be cooler, but it's gonna smell less bad. If you have too much nitrogen or too many greens, your compost pile is going to smell kind of off, but be on the hotter side. So the perfect balance is kind of right in the middle with your greens and your browns. And on that line, kind of different items, for instance, like wood chips, have a higher carbon content per weight. And so you're gonna wanna use less wood chips, for instance, to be balanced out with a green like grass clipping. So highly encourage you guys to take a minute and kind of look up the different, if you're interested in starting a compost pile, look up the different ratios for the different items you may be sticking in that pile. Today's video is kind of just a big picture overview of what is compost and how it affects your garden. So essentially once you have your mix right, you're gonna be putting that into a pile. And the ideal pile is a minimum of 1 cubic meter. So that means a meter high, a meter wide, and a meter deep. And the reason we have that is the kind of volume of the pile is how it gets hot. And so when you have enough volume, it can actually start getting hot inside and the internal processes will get going. And a compost pile can actually reach upwards of 60 degrees Celsius. And that's breaking down all those pathogenic bacteria, it's breaking down the nitrogen and the carbon, and it's turning it basically into fertilizer. And so a good compost pile usually can finish up in about a month. You're gonna wanna turn that pile regularly. Sometimes you have to moisten it down to keep the process going. But at the end of that, you'll have a high quality kind of product that's a fertilizer, and it can also be used as a mulch in your veggie garden. So that kind of is what is compost in a nutshell. Now getting into how does this affect my life, or how can this benefit me in the garden? Compost is a very nutrient-rich, biologically active fertilizer. And the beauty of compost is if it's done right, you can't actually do too much of it. So mixing a healthy amount of compost into your existing garden, you can do up to 70% compost and 30% topsoil in a vegetable garden and be just fine, as long as your compost pile was composted properly and it's a high quality compost. And so that's kind of the benefit of it, is it's very affordable. It's a great way of increasing your yields in a space, and it's organic, it's natural. You're not going and buying a bag of fertilizer that was made in a laboratory. You're using the natural processes around you to fertilize your garden. So that's kind of why compost is beneficial and why we would recommend using that in your garden. And not just veggie gardens, flower beds, putting it around shrubs. When we plant trees here at Symphony Landscaping, we will oftentimes put a yard of compost around the base of the tree to really kind of generate and get that biological processes running. And so that's kind of the uses of compost. Now you may be asking, well, where do I find compost? I don't really want to have a compost pile in my backyard, or I live in a townhome and I want a planter and I want to use a little bit of compost, but where can I find a high quality compost? So there's a couple of different routes you can go, depending on the amount you want to get. Oftentimes you can get it from the hardware store here in Alberta, Calgary, Alberta. We use, you can go to Canadian Tire, Home Depot, Garden Center, and get a nice high quality compost mix. If you're wanting to do it on a bigger scale, you can get a high quality compost from Soil Kings as well as from Dirt Cheap here in Calgary, Alberta, and that is bulk. So you're buying it by the yard and it'll be delivered in a dump truck. So we're talking wanting to use about 2 or 3 yards plus, I would recommend you go the bulk route. If you're just looking for a couple bags to put into your veggie planter, that would be a great option to just go to the hardware store. So that's kind of a little bit about where you can get compost in Calgary, Alberta. There's also city supplied compost. The one caveat with that is it's not quite the same process, and oftentimes it smells very strong. So I would recommend getting a compost from a specific compost supplier versus using the City of Calgary compost, but that's a whole other video in of itself. And then finally, if you're not in Calgary, Alberta, pretty much everywhere in North America, you're gonna be able to find a supplier that has compost. I would just look for a bulk landscape supplier or a bulk farm supplies place. Most places will be able to get you some compost. You can also go to mushroom farms. Believe it or not, in Calgary here, up by Balzac, there's the mushroom farm, and they literally grow mushrooms, and one byproduct of mushroom farming is compost. Now, the compost you're gonna get from a mushroom farm is not fully decomposed yet, so I'd highly recommend you get a meter of it and you put it in your yard and you let it break down just a bit more before applying it to your garden bed. But that is a free source of compost in Calgary, Alberta. And oftentimes, if you have a mushroom farm near you, I'd highly recommend calling and seeing if they have compost as a byproduct. So that's a couple ways you can get compost for your garden bed. Looking forward to the next video when we can talk about more tips and tricks to get your garden and yard going. If you would like this content, like and subscribe, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook as well. Thanks so much.